Hey,
Oh shit.
it's
Sorry I
are
said
we
shit, but I didn't cue up the video clip. But now I have it queued up.
all right? You ready, Brandon? Okay.
Ready.
See, this is semi-professional, whether you believe it or not, and the semi is very, very iffy. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's Sunday. It's time to go to church. It's time to be at 1714 West 7th Street in Ybor City, where it all began, because it is time to jump into the rotation. Now, it is so good to get back into the studio, because last week I did not make it into the studio because the clocks jumped up 1 hour and I didn't. And it's taken me close to a week just to get my body re-in tune to the fact that it is exactly 1 hour ahead of where I was before. And I blame Benjamin Franklin.
That's just in the headphones, Gary. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, I blame Benjamin Franklin because, of course, he was one who invented daylight savings time, just because we had to have more light for the farmers, right? So why did we decide to go ahead and go with a full flang all daylight savings time from now on? Thank you, Marco Rubio. Once again, you're screwing us up. Let's just put this at daylight saving time. Put it on the shelf. We're not farmers anymore. Well, actually, some of us are farmers, but we actually have things like lights now. We actually have light bulbs and things. That's what we didn't have during that time. So, anyways, enough of a rant on that one. Hello, I am your political director of Suncoast Normal, Gary Stein. We're here to go ahead and take apart what this industry is, what it does, and what it can't do and can do. And we have next to me here my deputy director, engineer, confidant, and friend, and semi-stoner, Carlos.
Semi-stoner. That's the worst introduction now that you ever gave me.
Let's take the semi out.
I'm a hell of a stoner.
Yeah, okay.
I'm a semi a lot of things, but I'm a good stoner. I'm a semi-engineer.
And that's Carlos Jose Angel Amida.
You got it right, yeah?
Yes. Yeah, we have one more person from Cuba who can't speak Cuban.
And it's called Spanish.
Okay. Spanish. and on the upper right hand side, we have here, from above the beltway, hitting below the beltway, we have our executive director, Chris Cano, who is constantly monitoring DC for us so that we don't have to. Chris, what's going on up there in DC right now?
Oh, greasy, grimy as always, But there's definitely a lot of movement. One of the most interesting movements right now is in the state of Maryland. Looks like they're going to be moving forward with putting a measure on the ballot in November, their state legislature, to allow people to vote for adult use in that state. And, that will pretty much round out the DMV. We already have adult use in Virginia. DC is still in this gray area where Congress is holding them up for moving forward with opening up adult use dispensaries. But, we're getting pretty close to seeing most of the Eastern Seaboard moving forward. The Carolinas are kind of like that last bastion of prohibition that we still have on the Eastern Seaboard.
And let's not forget that for those people who are not familiar with geography, you've got Maryland on the top, and you've got Virginia on the bottom, and DC is the bologna in the sandwich, right?
Yeah.
It's essentially as to where it goes. And so DC is going to be surrounded by sane laws, and DC's laws are semi-sane. Let's just put it that way. For instance, you can't actually buy it, but you can gift it, and so therefore you go to the store, you buy a bunch of stickers, and they give you free cannabis with your stickers. But the stickers cost about $30-$40. So
you can even buy something like a lighter too.
I'm really confused. Like, Chris, you're smoking stickers?
No, you're buying stickers. You're smoking the free weed they give you with the stickers.
He does lick the glue off, though.
You roll the weed up in the stickers.
No. You roll the. I prefer to roll mine up in the raw, but whatever papers float your boat.
I am going to have to try rolling a sticker now. That is my goal for this next week.
Children, everybody watching at home, please do not smoke stickers.
I was thinking about this the other day, actually. Like, why don't they, when I was working in Cali, we were doing like the donation system. Like, you donated to the collective, right, to buy your marijuana, right? Why don't you donate to wherever you buy your stickers from?
Because they only have gifting on the books. So
Really?
yeah. When you write a law, when politicians write laws in a vacuum, the people are going to be smart enough to figure out loopholes and ways to get around the incarceration parts of those laws. And one of the things about being I-71 compliant in DC is that you have to give someone the cannabis. So basically they have even delivery services where you can buy a smoothie. You buy $150 smoothie. Comes with like a half an ounce of bud.
That must be a delicious
$150 smoothie. Hope it comes with a banana. Anyway, before we introduce our guest for today, I did want to put out one more slight rant. We have some very unusual products that come out in the cannabis industry. This last week, the good folks over at Tyson Ranch came up with a new product, and these are gummies in the shape
Yes.
of left ears with the top part bit off.
Mike Bites, they call them.
Yeah, Mike Bites, because Mike Tyson wants to highlight the highlight of his career where he got kicked out of boxing by giving us gummies in the shape of a human ear, so we could all feel like Jeffrey Dahmer in the morning when we go to try to shake it, to wake and bake.
I like it. I love
don't think it's the best idea. I think maybe they kind of skipped that focus group part that you're supposed to have in marketing, where you ask people if they would actually buy it once, and if at all, would they buy it twice. I don't think this is one of those products that anybody would want to buy twice. I mean,
Gary, I got to disagree with you. I think it's one of those products where it's genius from a business point of view, in that, one, everybody knows the brand. Two, there's this big rigmarole right now in the industry or among regulators that you can't make gummy bears because it's attractive to kids. Well, human ears are not marketing to kids. Mike's actually doing what the regulators want.
It's all about marketing. Where is he marketing?
I hate that you figure out what flavor it is.
I'm sorry. Like I've got a really bad joke right now, and I'm like gonna ruin the joke just because of how horrible it is. But
let me just say that if it wasn't Mike Tyson and it was Lorena Bobbitt, those would be in a totally different shape. I don't know if those would actually sell.
I agree. I agree.
And I don't know, like, because like the worst thing about Mike Tyson wasn't that he bit off somebody's ear. Like, he should do like a smack your wife gummy or something like that.
Oh man.
Because that, like, seriously, because like that's what people remember about Mike Tyson. Why don't they remember that?
Absolutely.
Why is he such a credible figure? Like, why is he known as like this peaceful guy?
I couldn't figure out why that pretty lady was even with him in the first place. But
I gotta say, Mike's podcast, Hotboxing, his weed brand. He is one of those celebrities that had a controversial past, has undergone a rebranding. I mean, if people are in the business of giving them second chances, that's fantastic. And if they're not, he's doing the successful marketing. I mean, there's been a lot of celebrities over the years who had trouble and then rebranded and became successful. Robert Downey Jr., prime example.
Mm-hmm.
So Mike is definitely now, you're right. You don't think of peaceful when you hear Mike Tyson, but if you look at his podcast, you see how he's doing. Mike's become a really mellow, type of guy in a lot of ways in his old age.
I mean, I get that. Okay. But like, here's the thing, right? It's like, he's able to get into the cannabis industry and rebrand because he's got a lot of money.
This is
yeah,
true,
he says
right?
he claims he smokes $1,000 a week.
Yeah. And I'm over here with my store, and I'm trying to open up a dispensary in Florida, and I can't even budge, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand why somebody who's like fame is biting off some dude's ear, being the heavyweight champion and biting off somebody's ear, and then beating your wife, and that's okay. Like, nobody remembers that. Like, what of his rebranding effort was changed the way that he views women?
That would be nice.
Yeah, like what in that, has he done any effort in that side of things? Like, is because I don't think he's known for that. He's known for rebranding, putting out a gummy that's in the shape of an ear.
Well, I'm going to put out a little statement here for somebody who once again is not our sponsor, but Benzinga, my friends in Detroit, are actually having a conference in Miami coming up next month, and Mike Tyson is the keynote speaker. Now, as eloquent as a speaker as he is, I don't think that he's keynote material, but everybody is dying to hear what he has to say. Are you dying to see what he has to say?
No. I don't think Mike Tyson is anybody that should be in the cannabis industry. I put in a lot of effort. I have a freaking MBA. I moved out to California, did the Oaksterdam thing. I put experience into different dispensaries out in California, you know, and I have a good record of being a good person. And this guy's got money, and he was a heavyweight champ, and that's why he's in the industry, and he's got like these gummy shaped ears. I'm just trying to say that, like, I think the cannabis industry has a little bit of a double standard. You know what I mean? Like, we're supposed to be looking at this industry and people that like, why can't somebody that's been growing for years that has been arrested and put in their dues for growing get into the industry, and some dude that's been arrested for you know, beating his wife get into the industry, no problem. You know, like why are we not focusing on that? You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
You know,
now, interestingly enough, he's not the only celebrity that's had products before. Whoopi Goldberg had an entire line all dedicated towards handling menstrual pain, which was a constant problem in her family. And her first venture actually failed. It actually conked out. They had bath bombs and other things, but she's trying again. And that is, I guess, one of the issues in regards to women in the industry, that when they try to focus a product that is female oriented, a lot of times it does not fly. But if this flies as opposed to Whoopi's product, that's going to say a lot about the industry, and it's going to say a lot about what our current guest is going to be talking about in regards to women getting and women and being involved in and getting hired in this industry, and actually making it happen. Chris, would you like to go ahead and introduce this young lady for us?
Yes, I would like to introduce my really good friend for many, many years, and former colleague, Juditte Dorcy. Judy is CEO and Executive Director of Workforce Strategy. I had the opportunity to work with Judy at the Tampa Bay Workforce Board many, many moons ago. And it doesn't seem that long ago, Judy, but
No.
it's been a decade now since we started working together. And it's been a ride these past 10 years.
Yes.
You know, I'm in a different place now. I know you're in a different place, but you know, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and you know, and tell the folks what is a workforce board, and what maybe folks don't understand about workforce solutions and stuff.
And Chris's hair is a tad longer now than it was then.
Just a tad. Okay, he's got some extra hair there, but I still recognize him.
He has that Nazareth look about him.
Same. Well, good morning. I am so pleased to be on your show this morning. I am Juditte Dorcy, again, CEO and Executive Director of the Skilled Talent Workforce Solutions. And it's my now consulting firm. I launched 16 years of my experience in the workforce to now do workforce consulting. Prior to that, my last role, I was COO for the for CareerSource Tampa Bay, which is the local workforce board for Hillsborough County. If for those of you that don't know what the workforce board is, it's the local regional workforce board that assists anyone that is unemployed, underemployed, that needs a job. We help businesses as well that are looking to hire people. And I know that's a big issue right now. Definitely something we're going to get into about how we help these businesses and what these businesses can do to help to find their people. Since the pandemic, it's been a big issue for people to hire in this industry, and a lot of openings still available. But the workforce board is available to those businesses that need to train someone. They leverage and give dollars to those businesses to help train those folks that don't have those skills, to give them opportunity in the industry that they're looking to work in. So a big job for the workforce board, but I served for the workforce board for 16 years. So I worked with over 10,000 businesses in the Tampa Bay area, to include Hillsborough and Pinellas County, as well, countless job seekers.
Are you directly associated with the DEO?
DEO is oversees the workforce board. Yes, the 24 regional workforce boards in the state of Florida.
Yeah,
And
people
I can
always say
vouch
that's
for Judy helping job seekers. When I first went in to apply to work for Job and Workforce Board, Judy was like, "You are way too overqualified to be doing data entry," and put me in charge of actually engaging employers and helping them, be able to take advantage of the programs. And for some folks who might Workforce Board, these fancy words, it's like the unemployment office on Florida, y'all. For the common folks listening.
They changed it because the unemployment is no longer handled there.
Yeah.
Although during COVID, it was a big issue. So we actually did assist in the offices locally. So it was a old tradition that came back to assist those Floridians that were had a hard time filing for unemployment. We took that on for a period of time, but now unemployment is outsourced in the state of Florida. So a separate agency does the unemployment claims, and we do reemployment. So it was a big campaign to push towards helping people get employed versus just helping them file for unemployment.
That is such a
Um,
ministry.
um, so our business is definitely employer. So that's my background. So my passion is definitely to continue to help not only the workforce boards now create performance-based models that works for their area nationwide, but also to help job seekers learn about the programs that are available to them to push them to a successful career.
Well, Judy, when it comes to job seekers and joining the workforce and getting reemployed, at the beginning of this presidential administration, there were a significant number of very qualified folks who were let go from the White House because of their past cannabis use. And just recently, I was reading Marijuana Moment, and feds reveal which industries drug trust workers the most and which ones the least. And looking here, the 10 states with the highest percentage of establishments drug testing are South Carolina, Indiana, North Dakota, Kentucky, Wyoming, Mississippi, Tennessee, Georgia, West Virginia, Alabama, all states that are prohibitionist states. And then you have some of the lowest states. The lowest state with the number of establishments drug testing is California, and then Vermont, Rhode Island, Maine, Puerto Rico, New York, Montana, DC, Massachusetts, and Colorado. And so one big barrier to reemployment for a lot of folks may be, and even, we've had it in the Republicans here in Florida trying to pass it to where you can't even get welfare or food stamps, if you test positive for cannabis. So, now that Florida's legalized it, Gary and myself and the members of Suncoast Normal and all the normal chapters have been pushing for changes in the employment laws, and we keep getting stalled in Tallahassee. You, on the other hand, engage the employers. What are employers saying to you? Are they coming to you for advice? Are they coming and saying, look, we don't know what to do in this changing environment?
Yes, and that was one of the things that led me to wanting to do the show. So in workforce, we're required to do what they call industry consortiums, and what happens with the consortiums is we gather, lead businesses or employers that are leading in those specific industries to do a roundtable discussion on specific topics. And normally those topics are for us to hear what their pain points are. How can we help them establish, whether through getting a grant to help them establish what they need to within their industry to help them. So for example, in logistics, we would try to get Amazon around the table, or in retail, we would try to get Walmart. So at least 20 businesses in those industries. So when we did the one for manufacturing, little did we know we were going to have a full hour discussion about medical marijuana cards. And my biggest regret was I didn't have anyone in the room to speak on that as an expert. And the conversations were very open in terms of pain points of, okay, well, what do we do? Some of them didn't know that they had to go back and look at their no tolerancy policy that they have in place, that they have to kind of set some new rules to where based on ADA, they have to make accommodations for some of those folks. And they didn't know how to get around it, particularly manufacturers where, if you have a medical marijuana card, do you present that up front? How do the job seekers approach that? How do they approach it? That if they're very skilled, they're having a hard time finding machinists. And if they find one that has a medical marijuana card and they test positive, how do they deal with that? And the discussion was around the room that some had no tolerance for it because of the heavy machinery that they deal with. And then there were some that were willing to open up and make the changes. And we're seeking additional advice from attorneys on how to go about making those changes. So it was a big discussion, and I wish I had known more into that. But we later kind of looked into how we can have some type of dialogue to get them to open up about it. Because even us as a workforce board, we're an employer, we hire. That was something that we had to look into as well. What are we going to do if someone comes? Is the job that they're doing able to be functioned with them being able to use that for medical purposes, and it is something that has to be discussed. So I'm not sure how much employers are doing roundtables about it. It is much so needed, but I can tell you that discussions are being had, within the industries about it.
Well, this week some interesting things happened in the state of Illinois. The Illinois House passed a bill which would prohibit firing workers for trace amounts of marijuana in their systems. And essentially, what this bill breaks down to, in general, it'll prohibit employers from firing or refusing to hire someone based on a positive test for THC. And also, unless a worker shows signs of impairment or tests higher than the threshold for DUI, which is either 5 nanograms in the blood or 10 nanograms in the saliva, they would still be okay. And, there are some carve outs for, people who carry firearms, or those who do emergency medical services, or those who work on watercraft, motorized vehicles, aircraft, critical infrastructure. But one of the biggest things that I've seen in this nation is workplace drug testing is disrupting our supply chain. 72,000 truckers out of 3 million lost their jobs due to a failed drug test since the beginning of 2020.
Yeah, I hear drug testing for truckers is pretty insane. As a matter of fact, I've got a big customer base for people with Class E licenses, because like these guys, like literally, like they're it's legal for people for them to be pulled over and then to have to pee in the cup on the side of the road,
or just hand over their truck bomb.
Truck or
Are you familiar with those?
What is I'm imagining it's like something you pee in while you're driving.
That's right. It's usually like a 1 liter, 2 liter bottle, and you carry it with you, and then when it's full, you just throw it out the window. That's why it's a truck bomb.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Just so you know, it's just one of those little things.
Well, many truck bombs test positive for cannabis.
That's
apparently.
the problem.
No, and it's pretty crazy. And this is actually like I hate to go on a rant now or whatever, but I'm about to anyways. But it's something that always interested me. Like what causes you to get hired for a job, and like a lot of times it's like you know what I mean, like. Okay, so IT profession, right? For a long time, I've heard that if you wear a suit to an IT interview, an interview in the IT profession, you're probably not going to get that job, right? The reason being is because you dress for what you're going to get. You know what I mean? If somebody shows up here, I had somebody show up to an interview here dressed like they were going to the club, right? They dressed nice. There was some expensive ass clothes that they were wearing, but the thing is that I didn't hire them. They didn't feel like a right fit for the position, right? So like I would and then you hear like stories about like the FBI. The FBI is like trying to find IT professionals and they can't. They're having to get rid of their marijuana drug test because it's getting in the way. You know what I mean? Like when do we get to the point where like I hear you talking about manufacturing, right? And as somebody like I'm not the boss of a manufacturing line, and there's probably a lot that I don't know about it, but if I knew somebody that was suffering from anxiety, right, had a medical card and was working that line, I would want them to smoke before they got on the line, right? I would want them to take their medicine because chances are their anxiety is going to get in the way of the job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and I think it was more so the knowledge of what do those businesses do.
Yeah.
I think they just weren't educated enough on how do we move forward with this if this is what's the new norm. And
Yeah, when do we get to the point where like you sit down for a job interview and the boss is like, "Oh shit, do you smoke weed? We need somebody to smoke weed for this job." You know what I mean? Like, when do we get to that point? I think we're
never see
headed
that-
there, actually.
You ever see that in the
know?
prerequisites, do you?
I think we're headed there, though. I think sooner or later, like, somebody's going to be like, "Oh shit, you need to have a medical marijuana card to have this job. I want you to go out there, see a doctor, and get your medical marijuana card if you want to work here, okay, buddy?"
Now that would work if by chance that the number one thing that employers look for is experience within that particular genre, because that doesn't necessarily come up to be the number one thing that actually makes somebody be hired or fired. I can tell you for a fact, back in 2011, when I just turned 54, I left the workplace as far as Department of Health because Governor Scott decided to lay off 2,000 employees of the Department of Health in order to shrink the department. And I went to Workforce Solutions and all that bit through, and they were looking more at my age more than anything else. My experience at that point in time didn't have much to do with anything anymore. I mean, I could have just as much experience as anybody else out there, but seeing the fact that my hair was not of a darker shade really did cause an impact. Ageism is one of those things that is still out there that is preventing people from getting hired, regardless of the amount of experience they have, regardless of their workforce performance. And I think workforce performance really should be the number one key factor. Don't you think so?
Yeah, I agree.
I'm
Unfortunately,
gonna throw something else into the mix there. I think coachability is a little bit more important than workforce experience.
Coachella?
Coachability.
Okay.
I think sticking to your experience kind of gets in the way of innovation. I think you need to be
And
coachable. Like, I think
this is the key
that's
word,
honestly the
innovation.
biggest problem with hiring older people in the workforce is that they're like, "I've been doing this for 20 years and I know what I'm doing." And you're like, "But this new software came out and we could probably do it better," and like blah blah blah, and like, no, I know what I'm doing.
Sal,
So-
I like your impression of old people, but this sounds so great.
Well, no, Carlos, you bring up a good point. 2 years
Yeah.
ago, the workforce changed. I mean, everything is done on Zoom now. Meetings that were people used to say, "Oh, this meeting could have been an email." Well, now it's just a 10-minute Zoom call, just so I can see your face and get across to you what I got to say. But it's interesting to see that like you said, innovation happens, and oftentimes, people who have been in the workforce for 20, 30 years doing the same thing can't always adapt to the changing workforce. I mean, I know that in the medical field. Things went entirely digital in the past decade, right? You used to write on a chart, 10 years ago, and now all charts are digital, and everything communicates. Whatever you're charting on that little iPad communicates, to a central database and such. But one of the things that I think is interesting is, and just tying it back to drug testing, is which industries are actually still drug testing, and where is that happening? And if you're looking at the screen, you can see here, natural resources and mining, utility companies, but it really is that trucking, like we were talking about, is still one of the top industries that is out there. You don't see it a lot in the business sector. You mentioned IT, less than 10% of IT. I mean, if you drug test in the IT sector, you're going to lose qualified candidates.
Yeah.
Now, Judy, I don't know. You may have heard this story before if you follow any of the things that I put in there. But my middle daughter was working with an organization. They had a contract with Eckert to do case management, and she was working. They had her working 60 hours a week. She was working throughout the middle of the night, transferring kids back and forth from foster parents to the parents who were getting ready to lose their custody.
Wow.
And
That's a
at
tough
one point in
job.
time during lunchtime, she was sitting at a stoplight and somebody went and hit her. And so by company policy, she had to go ahead and take a drug test.
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, I have my medical card right here. You knew about that when you hired me because I showed it to you." And they said, "All right, here's the deal. We want you to take that drug card, that medical card. We want you to cut it up in front of us right now. And we want you to let us go ahead and test you at least 3 times a week, any day we choose." The fact was, I mean, she only used it on weekends when she was not on call and she was not on duty. And so therefore, if she did it on Sunday. On Wednesday, she tested slightly positive. On Thursday, she tested negative. But she was still working 60 hours a week. She was still performing at peak capacity. But that was enough to go ahead and end her job. As it stands, that particular company lost their contract with Eckerd, as a lot of people did, for not doing the proper job over there. But the fact is, that is what we're still dealing with out there.
Yeah, that is a tough situation. And if I'm reacting to this, and I've worked with so many businesses, I've never heard that. This is like, that's one that you have to really look at to see, okay, what what can you really say in terms of that situation? Did the company really look at it and say, hey, you know what, we want to respect that you have that, but maybe on certain days when you drive, I don't know. It's like, how do you, even me as a workforce expert, I'm not an expert with the medical marijuana card. So in what case, I don't know her medical history to say, analyze and say, was that acceptable? Should we have changed the scope of her job, to accommodate her being employed there with the card? So these are discussions that you really have to have with that. Again, that's
There's
hard.
two things that I'm sorry to. There's two things that come to mind here. First off, I worked in a dispensary in San Jose once, and I worked with a gentleman who simply got a medical marijuana card because he wanted to work in the dispensary that his aunt owned. Right. So he didn't smoke marijuana. He didn't smoke marijuana at all. He didn't consume cannabis at all. He didn't enjoy it. He just wanted to work with his aunt. So having a medical card actually doesn't necessarily mean that you consume cannabis. It just means that cannabis, a doctor deemed it to be beneficial for you, right? And second, right, in the Florida Constitution, it deems cannabis as medicine. So like what I hear is there's an employer that's literally saying you can't have your medicine anymore if you want to work here. Like, is there any way to like combat that at all? Like that that's like, we have a constitutional right to that medicine, right?
Yeah.
Like, how can an employer just take away a constitutional right like that?
And like you said, with the
Especially if they
Americans
knew
with
about
Disabilities
it.
Act does say you
Yeah.
have to have accommodations for people with chronic conditions and disabilities. And this for her was a disability because she had a chronic pain issue, which made it hard for her to drive because it was lower back, it was lumbar, it still is, and they had her driving hundreds of miles a week.
Accommodations come when you assess, right, to see if the job that they're hired for, with the disability or whatever the medical issue is, that the job can be performed still without any accommodations. So that has to be looked into. And again, I say, are the businesses doing this? Again, there's some businesses that are just going to stay conservative and just have a no tolerance policy. And then there are some that are going to draft the policy that's going to work with them, but they have to be careful that they fall within ADA compliance. So it's a very touchy situation, but there is topics, in my mind, I'm sitting here thinking, man, this would make a good town hall for businesses to come on and learn about this and have these discussions to hear what's actually happening in Tampa Bay. Again, just in that roundtable that we did, there were a lot of pain points, but there wasn't any progress to what can they do next. It was just more of complaints that here's what we have to deal with, and we're just looking for good people, but there's this whole issue that's a major something they have to deal with.
Is some of it just stigma, as in a theory which is really unbased by personal experience for a lot of these people?
It's got to be, Gary, because there's two ways to look at it, right? It's like some people look at cannabis similar to alcohol. And if we did, then that should blow up all these employers' positions, because of the fact that you can drink alcohol on the weekend and not come to work drunk on Monday. But if you smoke weed on the weekend, you can still test positive on Monday. And I think that's really what it boils down to is your analysis as a form of cannabis testing is obsolete. and we have to get rid of it. And, when we talked about the truckers, one of the most interesting developments is the Federal Transportation Agency is proposing new marijuana testing policies to reduce false positives. And one of the things that they're going to move towards is an oral swab, which would be set at 4 nanograms per milliliter as the cutoff. So then that way, someone who is ingesting THC while they're driving would test positive, but someone who, let's say, smoked a joint the night before so they could get a decent night's sleep shouldn't test positive.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
There used to be adjustments for
Mm.
alcohol. My father-in-law worked for Chrysler for many years, and one of the things he told me in his words of wisdom talk, among some of the other talks he gave me, was basically that never buy a car that was built on Monday. And I said, "Why is that?" He says, "Because most of these people who do work in assembly do a lot of 6-packs on Sunday, and so they might not be drunk on Monday, but they will be hungover, and they will affect their work performance. So whatever you do, don't buy a car on Monday." So that was essentially an adjustment for everybody else, for the fact that there's some folks do a lot of drinking on Sundays with ball games and things of that sort going on. But there's no accommodations, it seems, at all in regards to cannabis use, even if cannabis use is the reason they're able to come back to work in the first place. I had one gentleman with Crohn's disease. He was in hospice. And when he was treated, he's now in full remission. He's back to work, actually doing heavy equipment like he's been doing for all of his life for the last 30 years. It's practically second nature for him. But he was down to 79 pounds, and they thought he was going to die until somehow somebody got him some cannabis. And all of a sudden, the things started to reverse themselves. So if it weren't for cannabis, he wouldn't be back at work. Plain and simple, he wouldn't be able to support his family. He wouldn't be able to pay taxes for all of those conservatives out there.
This might be a strange point to make, but I'm going to make it anyways. So I got a DUI like long time ago. Like
Which one?
Driving under the influence.
Okay.
I'm confused as what to. Basically, like I failed a roadside test. Right. They arrested me on the side of the road and they took me to Orient jail. And then they made me blow into the breathalyzer at Orient jail. And like, I had just missed the cutoff point. I forget what the cutoff point is. It's like
0.08.
0.08. I was like 0.078 or something like that. And then I remember the guy was like blow again. Right. So I blew again. And then at that point I did 0.08, right at 0.08. Right. And they arrested me, gave me the DUI right there. Right. And then I started, like, I went to certain lawyers and I was like, after the whole ordeal went down, and I actually found a lawyer that was willing to argue that I wasn't actually drunk when they arrested me, because like alcohol kind of like builds up in your system over time. Right. So they had to take me into Orient jail. Theoretically, I wouldn't have been over the 0.08 because I would have made it home before I got to the 0.08. So because alcohol, you drink it and it actually takes a while to get into your blood. So by the time it actually would have gotten into my blood, right, and I would have actually been drunk, right, then they prematurely arrested me. And then you're sitting here, Kano, and you're talking about people on I mentioned before, truckers get drug tested on the side of the road, like they're piss tested on the side of the road, and they're literally taking a piss test that tests them for months in advance, right? So there has to be a new way to approach this. Like in my mind, Juditte, like, the way that we're approaching drug testing in the workplace and even legally by law, like even the cops, the way they're approaching drug testing and alcohol testing is completely reckless. It's completely wrong. And it's like, it seems to me like a science that should be completely thrown out and just started over. You know what I mean? Like
state. Well, just to let you know, any workforce board employees, not only do they test when they get hired, but now the previous governor put a rule in place that they have to do a new drug test, even if they've been in with the business. Like me, I was there 16 years, but every 5 years I have to do a new drug test.
Wow.
and put it on file.
Wow.
So it's a
Yeah.
business too, by the way. So
Yeah.
Well, it is a business. I had the unfortunate experience of being court ordered to go to rehab when I was arrested for getting my father his medicine, and I can tell you that DACO as a business, and I'm not knocking the rehabilitative work that they do for people with serious issues, but I also see the big corporate side of things and how they're getting a lot of money from the government, millions of dollars to run this drug testing business, which oftentimes isn't accurate, and there are people's freedom, their livelihoods, their lives on the line. If you test an abnormal test, or if you drank too much water that morning and your pee is too diluted, you can actually be given a probation violation and lose your freedom.
Wow.
To think that a non-elected bureaucrat making $9 an hour at a nonprofit drug rehab facility has your freedom in their hand, that's scary.
Well, it's not unusual because there's other ways that people could also get affected by that, including the people who get Baker Acted. Even kids at school right now can get Baker Acted during the day, and their parents don't know that they've been Baker Acted when they don't come home from school.
God.
And but that's another issue for another time. But that's the kind of situation when you have, as you said, non-elected bureaucrats having that much control over things. Now, we had somebody who posted a while ago. They said that they doubt that it was possible for anybody to have their card taken away and cut up by an employer because the employers don't have access to the medical information. These people did not have the access to medical information because only the police and researchers in a blind study and the police and the healthcare provider actually have that information. But the fact you have a medical card is a way of people telling that if you were using cannabis, you're using it legally, and therefore that is why you at that point in time you should say, yes, I have a medical card. This proves I'm using it legally, and that's why I'm going to work. And if you check my job performance, you'll see that everything's fine. But that is the issue we are dealing with right now because they do have no tolerance policies, and they can say you should not even have a medical card. But the question is whether it's ethical. I guess that's really what it comes down to.
Mhm. So what do we tell job seekers? Because that's one thing that I would love for recruiters to be able to educate, them on what do you do if you have a medical marijuana card? Are you telling the business up front? It's risky because some of them have a no tolerance, and if they hear that, they're not going to want to deal with it, and they'll find a way to not put you in there. Not that that's correct, but you never know by revealing that. What should a job seeker that has a medical marijuana card do in
Well,
that situation?
that's an interesting point, Judy. It really depends on how bad do they need the job, right? Because in the grand scheme of things, if you really need a job, and that job has drug testing requirements, one of the things that you got to do is get past that drug test. You got to overcome it. But if you're someone who medicates on a daily basis because you have a chronic debilitating condition, you don't necessarily have that option. So being upfront with your employer is the only thing that you can really do. And then that goes to what you just said. If an employer is uneducated or if an employer has some type of federal mandate, then they're definitely in trouble. And, when we talk about this changes to federal drug testing, a link was just dropped for folks who are watching. The Federal Register is open right now through public comment till March 30th, telling the Department of Transportation that they need to change to an oral fluid specimen testing for drugs rather than a urine-based one. And then that way we can actually, more accurately have a workforce, one, and two, a trucking force that's not being dismissed arbitrarily for DUIs and other things of that nature because they smoked a week ago. And that goes back to,
How accurate are those oral fluid tests?
well, if you just smoked, it would test up. But if you smoked the night before and brush your teeth, you shouldn't be testing over 4 nanograms. Now, Carlos, your regimen of doing 4 dabs in the morning, I don't know. But maybe if you wake up in the morning and do 4 dabs, trucking isn't the industry for you. That's all I'm saying.
Not to brag, but I'm up to
So-
6 dabs in the morning.
Show us your shirt. Show everybody your shirt. A cough is from dabbing, not from coronavirus.
So I wanted to say this. So many years ago, before cannabis started becoming legal in some states, one of the workforce boards, I'll say in Illinois, I walked in, and in the lobby they had a list of drugs, right, from weed, all types of different drugs that were listed, and they had how long they stay in your system. And then at the bottom, it had, where you could go to get it out of your system, things like that. And that was the first wake up call to, this is how bad we need employ, skilled labor. So we're going to assist you in telling you how you could pass a drug screen. It was unreal. So fast forward today, in the question that I asked about the medical marijuana card, are they protected by HIPAA laws to where they don't have to reveal that up front? But if once they take the drug screen, if it comes back positive, do they at that point say, "Hey, I have a medical marijuana card, that's why I came back," in that fashion? So these are all topics that I think, maybe some employers have educated themselves, but across the board, I don't think everyone has the same education.
But Judy, let's talk about the construction industry for just a second, because
Okay.
that's the industry where a
Love
lot
it.
of people end up with back injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And when they go to have it taken care of, oftentimes they're given a prescription for opioids and they go back to work with those opioids in their system. The question is, do employers generally automatically test for opioids when someone comes back from to work after a back injury or a neck injury or whatever that
Yes.
kind of
And
situation?
yeah, opioids is one of the biggest conversations in workforce right now on Capitol Hill. They want every workforce board to come up with a program for opioids, how we connect with those that have used opioid, how we get them into a program to transition out, because a lot of them, it's been typical that a lot of them have relapsed and gone back in. So they want to see every workforce board basically create a program for those that exit out of, a program for them to get off of opioids. And it's a major topic right now, to help them get back into the workforce. It is a major problem, I guess, with employers, and it's so much so that it's now a conversation with what do we do on the workforce side to assist in promoting that, what this is and how we can help folks that have come off of that, to get back into the workforce. So these are all big topics.
I mean, I actually see a commercial on TV where the guy is walking around with a hard hat in a construction site and talking about the fact that he has constipation from his opioid use. And I'm thinking, that's not your biggest problem if you're working in construction. And you
Mm.
shouldn't be walking around with a hard hat on opioids, because that is where accidents actually do happen.
Yeah. Maybe you can
Um,
help me. I we've been spending this whole time thinking about this topic from the perspective of the marijuana smoker and the medical marijuana patient and whatever.
That's us.
And yeah, us, like of course we're thinking about it from that. But let's think about it like from the side of the business owner, right? Because like I'm sure there's a lot of business owners that are like for cannabis and for cannabis reform,
That's you.
but well, I take it a little bit of a step further, Gary. Like these business owners that are scared about the liability, scared about what it. Say for example, if I allow my employee to consume cannabis, if I know that my employees are illegally consuming cannabis on the clock, right, and one of them gets hurt, how much trouble could I get in? Do you know, or does anybody know?
Workman's compensation is a major issue in construction, in manufacturing. It is a major issue. Normally, you can't go on those sites unless you're 21 years old minimum. We
Yeah.
can't get youth hired in those to do demo without being, in that age bracket. So it's a major issue for them altogether. Most manufacturers, some of them can't even afford that. They outsource a lot of that stuff, and it's high risk, especially with whatever the products are that they deal with. They could be in a Six Sigma environment, which means minimal mistakes. It's just too high risk. So some of them don't even want to hire youth under age 18, sometimes 21. So
Mhm.
it's a big risk factor And that's the main issue that I've heard most manufacturing and construction folks say.
It can be, I mean, and and construction's a hell of an example. Like, I can't think of one person that I know that works construction that isn't cool with marijuana. You know what I mean? Like, most people on the construction side are like, yeah, dude, like, not that they're like complete potheads, but they at least know that marijuana is not a big fucking deal. You know what I mean? But yet, like, yeah, there's this big liability. There's this big concern for business owners. Like, what Gary's doing on trying to change the laws is very important.
It is, and we've had a real hard time of it. We actually had a bill that Kano and I crafted years ago that has been trying to get moved forward. This year, we had it filed in the House, in the Senate, as a bipartisan bill in the omnibus bill for the DOH. It was taken out of the DOH bill. The two House and Senate bills never got a hearing, and then we went ahead and had it switched to an amendment to try to put it into a bill, and that was automatically rejected. So 4 times.
No, Gary, you're not doing it justice. It was shouted down by the Republicans on the House floor. It wasn't rejected. They all just yelled out no. They didn't even take a formal vote. All right, so I just want the people to know how shitty the Florida GOP is. For doing that, and
just laughed it out of the fucking
and to the point, that clip. But
there's a comment. Gary, I have a light bulb eureka moment. Mike Smith just wrote this Facebook comment. Why don't we put a provision in there that, in addition, all members of the Florida legislature and the governor need to take a piss test? Because I guarantee you, if we start drug testing, these guys making the drug testing laws, we're going to see some changes in the drug testing laws.
I've seen these guys at some of those events after hours, and they imbibe quite a bit. And a lot of them don't come in the best of shape in the morning. I'll tell you that for a fact. And we do know that some of our legislators, although I'm not going to name any names, but they know who they are, who do have a little bit of a smoking club going, and they have for many, many years. But they're not going to tell you that because they have to follow the line. They have to step in line with leadership and things of that sort. So they're going to keep on moving in that direction, whether they want to or not, because it's all part of politics.
Yeah. Carlos, I do want to say this also, because, and I'll put my recruiter hat from in the past when I used to talk to employers who would call and say, look, Judy, I need somebody. And I would basically tell them, listen, there's applicants out there. I don't know if they'll pass the drug screen. And he's like, listen, if let me try them. If they fail, they're going to have to come back and try again. So there are employers that if that person has that skill, they won't hire them right away if they fail that drug screen, but they'll ask them to come back 7 days later, whatever their rule is, to try them out again. So there are employers that I've seen that are willing to give them a chance because they might be cannabis users themselves, but they have to restrict themselves to what the rules are of that company. But they understand as somebody hiring someone, that situation. So they give them a second option of coming back. And some of them did pass the second time, and they brought them on because they were that desperate for the right person to come. And this is why I think the government puts up so many dollars for educational training, on the job training, because it's hard to find applicants with all of these rules. So for me, there's a big message to employers right now is to open themselves up a lot more than what they're doing. Part of why they're having a hard time is because they have the same strategic plan on what they're looking for, how they're recruiting, what their typical applicant should not look the same. They need to go back to the drawing board, look at their wish list, and they're going to have to cut some of that out and open themselves up to what is, of course, staying within their guidelines, but opening up to what the applicant can look like.
Well, Judy, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up because that struck a nerve in what I've seen in the cannabis industry here in Florida is that the dispensaries, the MMTCs, are looking essentially for the same type of robotic candidate. I had some friends who were denied jobs in dispensaries, and they were veterans, but because they had their hair too long or they had dreadlocks, right? Everybody wants this clean cut, buttoned up. Apple store looking type of dude to work in a dispensary. Well, Carlos can tell you that's not the type of guy in California that you would trust, with advice when you have chronic pain. And Gary could tell you that, you walk into the MMTC in Florida and you're asking these clean cut Apple store looking workers about help for a medical issue, and they have no freaking clue. Wow. So the industry itself is doing that same thing. And while we still have around about 5 minutes left in the show, Judy, I wanted to switch gears and talk about the industry and talk about how, you do workforce solutions, and we're talking about these round tables, all these businesses. Where is the industry at these round tables? Why isn't the industry at these round tables? And also, how do we get, MMTCs and such into like the Tampa Chamber of Commerce? How do we get them as legitimate members? Because the Florida Chamber of Commerce is our number one opponent in legalization in the state of Florida. So how do we change that from the inside?
Well, I mean, you're still a business, so I don't understand why that should be a problem that you don't have a seat at the table. I'll talk about the biggest thing, diversity. Even though there's opposition, you still need that at the table. Even though you don't agree, you still need it at the table in conversation to say, how can we make this work? So I wouldn't stop trying to knock that door down. And you're absolutely right. In doing statistics, even in workforce and labor market, there's 27% of CEOs in cannabis businesses are women. Last year was 36%. So there's diversity in the cannabis business, and it's booming. So at some point, and they grow in that industry. There are a lot of women start out as pickers, and they grow and become CEOs. There are associations with females that are CEOs, and they are strong in Colorado and in California. And they're a unification, and they're growing, and they're making good money. Salaries anywhere from 142 to 300,000. So it's an industry that is definitely growing, and more women are looking at that industry and coming from corporate America, going into that industry and growing to run it. Whether it's a product, whether it's software in the cannabis industry, it's there. I could name 4 of them. True Leaf. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But there's quite a few. So that industry, you're right. That industry has to be recognized. They need to be at the table. Florida Chamber of Commerce needs to recognize it as an industry because people are moving into that and creating careers out of it.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Trulieve got their ability to get a license just like every other legit business in Florida. They bought politicians to do it. So why shouldn't they have a seat at the table with the rest of the corrupt businesses, right?
So does Career Source have any contracts with any MMTCs to bring on people for their industry as well? If is the industry coming to the workforce board for help for staffing? That's what I'm asking.
So I'm not there anymore, so I am not sure. But while I was there, and I haven't seen any. I don't know if Chris, the organization, ever posted a job order, but you guys did attend our job fairs to find employment and to promote, your organization. But that was the extent of it. I think you guys may have been the first.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah, but we welcome. I mean, come on, CBD. All of this is something that is naturally used by corporate America. I'm not even gonna lie, it's out there. So technically, it's an accepted industry. It should be. They employ, they hire, and they promote.
So Carlos is actually in the process of hiring. I mean, we have our Cannabis Business Expo. We're going to be doing interviews there. But could his business at Chillum utilize the Workforce Board services? I mean, he's a taxpayer. He's a business owner. Could he come in for staffing?
You can post it. Any business can post a job if you're paying minimum wage or higher. Yeah. Okay, if it's a base wage and higher, you are free to post a job in the Employ Florida system. It is for any business that's registered in the state of Florida or in wherever Employ Florida is. In many other states, but Employ Florida, absolutely, you can use it. You can do a self use. You can register yourself and use the system and recruit out of the system on your own. You don't even have to be handed or assigned a recruiter. It is self use as well.
Nice. I am going to be sure to do that.
Now, of
Yes.
course, we still have those special certificates that the people can get from the federal government if they hire people with disabilities or in agriculture, where they can actually hire at less than minimum wage. And people like Goodwill do that constantly. They look for people who are disabled in the workforce so they can pay them less than minimum wage. Do you still see that happening?
We don't want to hear that.
But it happens.
And I'm gonna tell you something. Whenever when we used to get a job order and it was below that, we always called the employer prior to that, and we would pull labor market information and let them know. I just want you to know this is below minimum wage. We cannot refuse you posting. We can't post commission jobs, so that's a no. But if it's below minimum wage, we tell them you're not within the standards of this industry or this job, so you may not get a lot of applicants. We're just letting you know up front. And technically, why would we waste a recruiter's time on a job with something that low? We let the system work for itself. It's open to the public to see it. So, good luck.
Well, here's a scenario for you. A gentleman comes into your office who has been laid off because his organization dissolved during COVID. He's got years and years of experience, but he has a medical card because he has a medical condition which he needs to continue using so he can go back to work. And he sits down with you and says, "What can you do to help me find a job? Here's my medical card. I'm being upfront about this. Where do I go from here? What do you recommend?"
Well, first I have to screen to see what his current skills are and what we can train him in where that can be accepted. And that's interesting. We've never had that happen. But I see that happening more, which is why I asked the question, what can you tell a job seeker? So I would love to help someone that is in that situation, just to see if an employer would open up to me promoting that. I have never had a problem. It's the business that we do where we take an applicant and promote them to a business, especially if that job seeker is willing to be upfront and has a skill and is marketable. Yeah, I'm putting them out there.
Well, Judy, what I find is the classism in all of it, because I've never seen a job advertised on the ladders that drug test people. People making $100K or more a year don't get drug tested. It's the working class of America that's being drug tested, and for so many reasons, the classism behind that is wrong, and it irritates me to no end.
Yeah, sometimes C-suite used to mean cocaine.
Oh, who are you telling?
Oh my God.
Who are you telling? So, one of the interesting things that I, before we close out the show today, is that there has been a change in culture, though. 10 years ago, the majority of people arrested for federal drug crimes were cannabis users. And this year, a most recent report came in from the U.S. Sentencing Commission. Just under 1,000 people were charged federally with violating marijuana laws. That comprises less than 6% of people violating federal drug laws, where there used to be well over a majority. As a matter of fact, just half of all people charged with federal drug offenses in 2021 were actually being prosecuted for trafficking meth. So, federal prosecution for marijuana trafficking is dropping significantly over the past few years. And I think that's an interesting thing to look at as well, is that cannabis has become more normalized. We got right now the Senate of Pennsylvania is advancing bipartisan legalization. In Delaware, it fell short by just 2 votes in the past week. But there are multiple states moving forward with adult use. And so it's not just a medical issue now, too. It's This is widely available. People can go smoke weed, no different than drink alcohol on the weekends. The employment, the drug testing, and the workforce has to change. We got to adapt to the 21st century and the realities of it. And I just, the fact that we have these companies still stuck in a 1980s mindset is mind boggling.
Well, I'll tell you this. I have seen a shift in a lot of employers, particularly in again manufacturing and construction. Whereas in the past, if there was moving from the drug testing to the background issue, that if they had a drug issue, a felony, and it was drug related, they were more forgiving of that than they were someone who had a grand theft auto, right? Or, a robbery, and things like that. They would literally, if it was a drug charge, they would overlook that. So I have seen leniency more so on that, than some of the other cases on that side of the fence. So I've seen a shift there.
Well, we had Tommy Chong on the show 3 weeks ago, and one of the interesting things he said was when he was in federal prison, most of the people there were drug offenders. It's not the murderers and the rapists; those are not the guys that are locked up right now. And so that's we had another guy on the show before Tommy came on, Richard Dorcy. This guy got sentenced to 90 years in prison in Polk County. He served 32, for marijuana trafficking. And so, just understanding that these laws have been on the books and have been used in such a manner where there are such levels of injustice that we see in this country. And yet now we also see it's normalized. You mentioned you throwing out their names of CEOs and such who run these multi-billion-dollar corporations that are profiting on it while there are people who are going to spend the rest of their lives in jail. So we have to do something and do right.
Yeah, it doesn't balance out.
No, I know we have to close this out pretty soon, but because it's Women's Month and because I still want to be able to get back in the house when my wife actually let me in, do you still see a disparity in regards to the jobs that women are able to get offered in regards to pay versus men?
It's still an issue, and people are slowly trying to look into that because the DEI is a big topic now. So I think people are paying a lot more attention to it right now. But it is still an issue. It is, I can contest to it. I am a C-level employee or a C-level person, and I am having an issue.
So Lily Ledbetter be damned. Huh? That's the way it goes?
It's a lot of, they've got to get better. We have to have equal pay. It's got to go up. The experience that women have, we're multitaskers, we have a lot of strengths, and people just need to open up and just be diverse. It's happening. If the cannabis business can do it a lot with 36% of women, do you know how many percent of women in the corporate world are CEOs? 11%.
Wow.
11%. It's 27%, 36 last year percent in the cannabis industry. So this industry is doing a lot more different things than what typical industries are doing. So those things have to be shown. And there's a lot of work to do. Again, the employers have to open their minds and think differently about who they hire. DEI.
And hopefully not too many of those CEOs that are female are not there strictly as figureheads.
Yeah, and Gary, let's talk about that for a second. Here in Florida, there are 22 MMTCs that have licenses. Only one has a female CEO. None of them have women of color. Judy, so that's something to talk about too. Is you mentioned you're a C-suite executive. When you see, you look around the room, how many women are in the room, but how many women look like you that are in the room?
4% U.S. nationwide. Even in workforce, there's a big push now for women certifications because 70% of women in the workforce industry work on the front lines. That means they work directly with the job seekers, the walk-ins, etc. Only 30% of women in the workforce are in executives. And I didn't even break that down to, the ethnicity, right? So there's a lot of work to do, even in the industry that I've been in, and they've started that conversation. So it needs to be, there's a lot of work to do. So, I'm proud of the cannabis industry for what it's done, and how the industry has really opened up as an industry for in the workforce.
Yeah, and I was watching an interesting documentary this week, Ladybuds, and just seeing female entrepreneurs, women who have built businesses from scratch out west in California and such, and then when it comes to big cannabis, they're not being elevated to the C-level suite. And we had a lady on last week who has been doing this for over 30 years. So I think that women definitely, I would say I would much rather want to work for a female CEO in the cannabis industry than some of these guys who've been we've seen take their companies into the ground, living a Playboy lifestyle, because you just don't see that from female CEOs. It just, you don't see them burning through the company's Amex card, renting yachts to pop bottles with models.
And as an employer, right, and I've found that I'm starting to hire women more and more. And like, I was struggling at one point. I was like, man, I need to get some guys on staff because I need some diversity on the staff. But and not to mention, like, I mean, but you think about it, right? Like, think about it. Like, seriously, think about it. What's been going on with men and women for so long, right? For so long, women have been held to for such a high standard, right? Women have had to be perfect.
Perfect.
Right? And they have to be beautiful and not be a slut at the same time. Right. So it's
Like
real
talk.
I'm not touching that line. I am.
No, dead ass. It's not like and you should touch that line, because for the longest time, I mean, every woman in the world has been called a slut.
Well, look, but don't touch.
Every woman in the world has been called a slut, and just because that they're pretty and some guy hasn't gotten what they want, you know what I mean? So every woman, on top of having to be professional, on top of being held to such a high standard in the workforce, on top of having to struggles with being hired, and struggles with being paid less, and struggles in education, and struggles with all of this stuff, right? They've also been held to that fucking standard, right? So now as an employer, a guy comes into a job and he's like, yeah, I'm a dude and I got this education and I'm cool. You need me. Right. And then a woman comes into the job and she's like, yeah, I have all these qualifications and I'm very professional. And you know what I mean? And like, yeah, I'm coachable and yeah, I'm going to do the best I can. And it really becomes this thing where it's like, man, I don't want to hire guys anymore. I want to hire women.
That was my determining factor in getting my coronavirus vaccine. I got the Moderna one because that was developed by a 35-year-old black woman, and I was like, I know she got no free passes throughout her career.
There's your priorities, Chris.
I know she got no free passes in her career, but I know this Pfizer one was developed by a frat boy who partied all weekend. But this Moderna one, I'm pretty sure this girl knows what she's talking about.
I believe that fleet enemas were invented by a woman. Just saying.
That's because they got to clean out the men that are full of shit, Gary.
There you go. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. We have to have you back because these are issues that are ongoing. They're not going to change anytime soon, and we have to find a solution to move the industry forward as well as all the people inside of it. So Absolutely. We thank you for coming on today.
Thank you. This was a huge pleasure. Thank you.
So where can people find you? How can they support you?
You can go on my website, www.skilledworkforcesolutions.com. You can join me. I blog on there. I'm looking to do some talks, some town halls. You guys have inspired me to try to get this together, so I will definitely make sure you guys are included in that, because this needs to be a topic that continues in this county, Hillsborough County, through Tampa Bay, to include several counties in there. It needs to be a conversation.
And, on that note, we are going to do our best to create space for the industry, for job seekers here in Tampa Bay. And we are putting on the Tampa Bay Cannabis Business Expo, April 23rd, at the Tampa area Hillsborough Action Plan Group, 5508
Good catch.
And so we're going to have an amazing time. If you know, and you don't just have to be a cannabis business to be a part of this expo. We have vendor tables available for as low as $50. We have the opportunity that if you sign on as a sponsor, you can also get a second table to sponsor a small business of your choice. Give you that opportunity to really contribute and give back. We will have space for job seekers to interview, and if you have jobs, contact us. Let us know. But we still have another week for sponsors to come on and for folks who want to get their vendor tables, and we're pretty excited for this big event. You definitely don't want to miss it. You want to be a part of it. And furthermore, and to continue to do the great work that we do, we need you, the listeners, to become official members of Suncoast NORML, so we can continue to bring you great content here on the rotation. Amazing guests like Juditte Dorcy and such. And you got to join the cannabis movement. You got to get involved if you want to make it happen. Go to suncoastnormal.org, sign up to be a member through PayPal, and of course, you can pick up your membership packet there at Chillum. It comes with a gold leaf lapel pin, your membership card, and a 25% discount there at Chillum CBD dispensary and glass gallery. And furthermore, come on out to the Cannabis Business Expo if you're a member, of course. Also, for our members, you do get a $25 discount on a vendor table. So if you're a member and you want to be a vendor, by all means, hit us up and let's get you out there and get you part of the Business Expo. And with that, Carlos, Gary, we'll turn it back over to you all in the studio.
Okay, just a quick program note, and continuing with Ladies Month, talking about her story. We have Congresswoman Nancy Mays coming on next week, who is the female, obviously,
first female graduate from the Citadel.
Of the Citadel, wow. Yes, and as also a Congresswoman Republican from South Carolina, who wrote the states' rights bill that is going to help move cannabis legalization forward, hopefully at the national level. She's written the bill, and it's getting.
I love that she's written a bill for cannabis legalization. But when I hear the word South Carolina and state rights in the same sentence, I don't picture cannabis. Just saying.
That's a good question to ask.
She might. Yeah, we're gonna have to talk to her about branding on this bill.
Absolutely, and I told her comms folks, we may ask difficult questions, but she's a politician; she should be able to handle that. And they said absolutely.
And Judy, we'd love to have you back on the show sometime. I know you have a plethora of experience, and we just scratched the surface today in our conversations. But we would love to have you back on, and we'd love to have you at the Business Expo as well.
Okay. Yes. Yep. I will make it a point to try to be there. Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, team, jump back in the road.